Thank you for tuning in to another episode of our Friday show. I am Dave Kluge, and I'm here with my co-host, Stephie Smalls. We've got another great guest coming on today. Probably needs no introduction, but Yahoo Sports lead analyst, Matt Harmon. Matt, why don't you let everyone know where they can find you, what you've got going on right now, and a quick introduction here.
Oh, lead analyst. I think you just gave me a promotion, Dave. I appreciate that. And you know what? I think we're gonna make that official. That's gonna irritate a few folks, inside the building. That but
we'll just
I don't
splice
care.
it and send it to Andy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like Andy's been there, like 35 years at this point. I don't even know. It's been a long time. I'll just go ahead and just jump right to the top. That's fine.
You're the lead in my heart, Matt. How about that?
Again, I'm telling Andy. I'm telling everyone else.
You guys want me to go? Because I can leave.
So I'm sorry, but so Yahoo analyst and writer Matt Harmon. Maybe he'll be the lead writer someday, climbing that ladder. But yeah, why don't you let
Yahoo mid-tier, Yahoo mid-tier analyst Matt Harmon. Obviously you can find me on Twitter at @Matt_BYB. I'm on Yahoo Sports doing all kinds of stuff there, podcast, written content here and there. Just published a scintillating piece about the quarterback and tight end free agent market. What a group of studs that is. Andy Dalton, Ryan Fitzpatrick. I mean, I speak no ill of Ryan Fitzpatrick. Give me a break. But yeah, and of course, doing a lot of stuff with Reception Perception that coming soon. A lot of big announcements, a lot of big content drops coming from Reception Perception, but that's still a little TBD. But very, very soon, the people will be clued into what's going on there.
Yeah, we are going to dive into Reception Perception a little bit, just so you can kind of explain to people what that is. Because honestly, I mean, that's one of the reasons that I started following you, and it's just an amazing thing that you do every single year. So we've also got Stephie Smalls here. Steph, I know you've always got like a million things going on. So why don't you let everyone know any upcoming shows you've got happening? What else is happening? I can't even keep up at this point. So why don't you let everyone know where they can find you?
Yeah. So just our Friday. This is all I do. No, also FTN, my new gig, as everyone knows, next week. Look forward to me finally dropping some content. I'm going to be doing some breaking news reaction videos to all this fun stuff that's about to happen. So it should be a good time. And then some other stuff, but I'll keep my mouth shut for a little bit.
All right. Always keeping it just a little guarded. You don't want to tell everyone what you got on your plate. And then, of course, I'm Dave Kluge, and I usually don't plug my own work too much, but I am really excited. I got hired by the Football Guys team a few weeks ago and just got my first article published. So if you wanted to go check that out, it's nothing crazy, just talking about Allen Robinson and getting the franchise tag and how really I don't think it's as bad as a lot of people are making it out to be. I mean, the man is still probably going to see 150 yards or 150 targets and 1,000 yards. So if you want to check that out, I've got that pinned to my Twitter page. But let's go ahead and dive right in. Anyone that's watched this show before knows that we aren't doing a deep dive into numbers and analytics. It's the off season. We want to have some fun. We want to get to know the people in the industry. So we're going to ask Matt some questions so you can get to know him just a little bit better today. So I want to start off with the first question about Charlie and Peach. For those who don't know Charlie and Peach, they are Matt's adorable dogs, and they get deservedly a lot of attention on his Instagram page. So I think about this all the time. I've got 2 dogs myself. I just actually adopted a second puppy last week.
Shout out to you. Shout out to the puppy.
Yeah, shout out to the puppy. She's actually perfect.
Her name was supposed to be Stephanie, but somehow ended up being Tortellini. But it's totally fine, dude.
Tortellini, though. Come on. I mean, is that not a great
name? You don't want to cross those wires like between your co-host and then your dog's name. You don't want to mess with that.
So I want to ask you, because this is something that one of my dogs is just straight up Jerome Bettis tank. So when you're thinking about Charlie and Peach here, who are 2 NFL players that you would compare your dogs to?
That's actually, and we've got Peach literally barging through the office door right now. She will not come this close to the camera setup. But Actually, shout out to you, Peach, because tomorrow is her 1-year adoption anniversary. We adopted her the day LA went into lockdown. Great time to get a dog, of course. So yeah, I mean, when we look at it like player comparisons, obviously I'm going to go wide receiver here. It makes the most sense. I would say for Chuck, and I've had Charlie for seven years now. No, a little bit less than that, but he's an older guy now at this point. He's a veteran. There's another veteran that just hit the wide receiver free agent market from the Giants. Not that he made a big impact there. Golden Tate. Golden Tate, I've always thought, plays bigger than his size. He's got a lot of spunk, got a lot of attitude to his game. I always love watching Golden Tate, like for reception perception, charting the routes and everything, because he would always like make these big catches on guys, and then he'd get up and like, pat them on the head or something like that. That is a very Charlie thing to do. He thinks he's, the 6'5" Mike Evans type of receiver, but he's small, 13 pounds, little guy. So I would say that's a good player comparison for Chuck. Now, Peach is harder because I think she is, if you've seen pictures of Peach, great. Now they're both in here. This is a nightmare. I can't close this office door because Yahoo's got this whole camera set up in here, this giant wire. It's a train wreck. But anyways, when you're thinking about Peach, if you've seen pictures of her on Instagram, she's like buff. She's got shoulders. She's part Staffordshire Terrier, so she's definitely a big, beefy, monster specimen type of dog. But she is like the sweetest dog in the world, unless she's out there on the leash, man. It's like the right, then it's a whole nother story. But she is like very calm, like very timid, not trying to like, get too close, right? Because she is, she's got some history. She's been through some stuff. She's been through some trauma, and that's how she's made her way to us. So I think for Peach, it's like kind of, I would say, a slow developmental curve. It took her a long time to really get comfortable, but now that she's comfortable, she's like the best dog in the world. And that makes me think of Davante Adams, who took a little bit for Davante Adams to get up there, to get into rhythm, to get comfortable with Aaron Rodgers. There was a lot of rough moments, and there was obviously some rough moments for Peach at the beginning of her life. But here she is. She's thriving. She's excelling. 1 year in the system. More honestly, she got up to speed faster than Davante Adams. She's absolutely crushing it, just like Davante Adams is absolutely crushing it.
Love it.
Nice. And what about you, Steph? Because you've got a dog as well. We're all dog owners and lovers here. I mean, how could you not want to have? What about Kaya? Who would you say Kaya reminds you of?
I had to bring Kaya to my mother's because if she's not, she's lately like really wants to be on camera. And I don't know why, because she's mainly scared of people. She's very timid, very, but she's smart. She's a smart dog. So I'm trying to think, who do I think is, she would be a quarterback is what she would be. And she would fly under the radar. So I'm thinking I almost want to say she's like Aaron Rodgers. She's smart. She thinks things through. She watches her surroundings. Yesterday, it's so funny. My roommate was holding something behind her back, but it wasn't for Kaya. And Kaya, instead of trying to like jump at her like a normal dog, Kaya walked around to go behind to look at her back and realized it wasn't something she wanted and then walked away. Like, I was like, why are you smarter than most human beings? So I think that Kaya would be like Aaron Rodgers. She would stay out of the media. Aaron Rodgers doesn't really commentate. She's quiet, but smart, like very smart, very witty. Such a cool dog.
Speaking of smart, we already talked about Ryan Fitzpatrick a little bit. I mean, that guy had a perfect score on his Wonderlic test. I don't know if you get any smarter than that. Graduated from Harvard. I mean, that guy's, you want to talk about smarts, I don't think you can really raise the bar from Ryan Fitzpatrick. But back to you, Matt. We talked about your Instagram a little bit, and I did a little bit of diving on there. And something else that's pretty well documented is you have lost a ton of weight over the last few years. And I mean, it's something that I'm sure you've talked about before on other podcasts, but for other people that are trying to do that, what would you say is the biggest benefit to your weight loss? I know we got Troy King in the chat right now, and he's gone through something similar. And I mean,
shout out to Troy.
Shout out Troy. What's up, man? And he's past the point of weight loss. Troy's bulking now. Troy is bulking now. Yeah. So, but let's hear from you, Matt. What's the biggest benefit from this lifestyle change that you've made over the last few years?
Oh my God. I mean, the biggest is it's hard to say because it's a good point. Troy says it in the chat here. Health is wealth. Honestly, it's hard to pick just one thing in terms of what's the biggest benefit. It's just, I think though it's a confidence thing, and from confidence breeds good things all around. Like, not only do I feel better, like I look better, objectively look better, I also feel better about myself. And I don't think that I could do a lot of the things, that I do now. I certainly would not feel comfortable being on camera or being on podcasts if I didn't feel more confident in myself, because it's hard. I'm sure you guys can relate to this too. Doing this show, doing other projects, especially when you're on video, it's tough to just think like, yeah, a lot of people are looking at you. And even if you are, a quote in shape person, you're never truly like completely comfortable in your own skin. But for me, I think going through this process, that's been a big part of it. And also just, it's something else to dial my passion into, because, it's interesting when your hobby becomes your job, which is what football is for me, right? Football, fantasy football, studying players, that's supposed to be something that's like a hobby. But for me, I'm thankful and lucky enough that it's turned into a job. I think from there, it's like, okay, so that can't be the only thing I focus my attention on, right? Because then I would be a very boring person if all I could talk about was football and who had the highest success rate on go routes. No one wants to hear that. That's not on fantasy Twitter, right? So I think for me, it's something else to dial my passion into. And then it's also sprung up my my love of cooking, right? I tell people all the time, like, if you want to undergo a weight loss journey, I would say one of my biggest piece of advice is like, learn to cook and learn to love it. And I absolutely do love to cook and experiment with different things. Sometimes even if it's not the healthiest thing in the world to make, who cares? It's all part of the journey and part of the fun. So, that was not one answer, Dave. I'm sorry that I spun off there in a couple different directions, but yeah, I mean, the benefits to it are just are endless. And I'm glad that I made that choice and decided, because it's something that no one else can choose for you. And there's no one, if you are in a place where you're struggling with it, you have to kind of I'm a big believer in turning the mirror on yourself. And like, I can't sit here and be like, oh, my parents let me down because they only gave me junk food. Not true. My parents were always encouraging me to be better in that area. I was the one making those choices. Those are the consequences of my own actions. So I think for me, it's just about being introspective and then thankful that I made the decisions to get out of those places and be where I am now. I'm very thankful for where I am now.
Yeah, cooking at home makes a world of difference. People are always, you go out to a restaurant and you're like, why does this food taste so good? It's because they put like a stick of butter in every single thing that they make, and that's why the food's delicious. So yeah, if you can learn to start cooking at home, yeah, butter. Oh my God, don't even get me started on butter. I love it. But you talked about being able to turn your hobby into a job, and that's something that so many people that are in the fantasy football community that are going to be even watching the show right now want to know. And I've heard so many different stories about how people have been able to make that path. So, you don't have to go too in depth, but I'd love to hear kind of what your story was, because we've had some people on the show that have, known since they were in high school that that's what they wanted to do. They went to school to be a journalist and they kind of, worked their way through the ranks. Other people just kind of fell backwards into the industry. So what was your story like? When did you know you wanted to do this, and how did you get to where you are now?
Yeah, falling ass backwards into it. That would be me. That would be what I did. And for me, it was not one of those things where I knew that this was going to be my life path forever, right? For me, it was I actually went to school I studied sociology. I loved it. I was not a very good student in high school, middle school, anything like that. I was actually kind of a bad student. I was not good at just things I didn't care about, right? I'm probably, honestly, this is probably still a fatal flaw of mine. Like, if I don't care about something, really, really struggle to fake it. I mean, you could tell, like, you can even tell on like shows that I do now and stuff like that. If someone asks me a question and like, I don't really care about, I mean, speaking of, we were just talking about Troy. Troy's getting a lot of pop on this show, by the way. Troy, I'll expect the Venmo after this is over. When I was on his show just recently, he asked me a question about Preston Smith, and like, I'm not really a big fan of of Preston Smith. And you can always tell when someone Preston Williams, sorry, now he's actually correcting me in there. Preston Williams, I'm like, I'm not a big fan of him. It's like when I'm not going to go on and drop a big soliloquy about Preston Williams because I'm just not that big a fan. You asked me about Curtis Samuel, I could go on for 30 minutes. So it's one of those things.
Like, bring him up at some point.
If it's someone that yeah, exactly. If it's something that I'm not like that into, I'm just going to struggle to really fake it. So for me, like I was never that great of a student until I got into sociology, studying that in college. I just loved it. It just clicked with my brain. So that was what I really wanted to pursue with the rest of my life. I was actually in the process of, applying to schools to go get a PhD and like become an academic. That was the path I was going to take. And then life threw me a lot of curveballs during the year after I graduated college, and a lot of negative curveballs. That was actually at the same time when started to lose weight as well. It was a really tough time. This is just I've talked about this many times on podcasts. I won't blah 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 about it again here, but it was just real dark chapter of my life, and I needed something to kind of keep me going. Really get something to just be honest, something to live for. And for me, it was like I needed to pour my attention and my time to something. I was like, I love to write. I've always loved football. I love fantasy. Like everybody in my life is always telling me, you should start a football website. You should start a football website. So I finally did it. I started Backyard Banter. This was in the fall of 2013 during that NFL season. And then, one thing kind of led to another. For me, it was, and this is, of course, when it comes to like the advice stuff. And I always kind of hesitate to give advice to people about like how to get into the industry because no two people's path can be the same. And really what you should do is you should not be trying to do what Dave is doing or what Stephie is doing or what I'm doing or anyone else. You should try to find the gap there. You should try to find something that no one else is doing. And for me, I asked myself, what's the question about football that I want answered that no one else is answering? And for me, that was, what the hell are all these wide receivers doing on Sunday when they run off the screen and we don't see them? Like when someone tells me like, well, on my scouting draft guide scale, he's a 6 out of 10 as a route runner. I'm like, well, what the hell does that mean? Someone should really be out there quantifying that qualitative reality. So I decided that guy was going to be me, which birthed reception perception, which caught on in the business. It's what led me to link up with Sigmund Bloom, got me a freelance gig at Football Guys. Shout out to the Football Guys family, Dave. And then, then a freelance gig for the Washington Post, and then eventually the NFL Network. And now I'm here at Yahoo. And, it's kind of the condensed semi-long story there of basically how it went.
Well, first of all, I love that you say Football Guys family because I've only been there for a little while now, but like that is one of the first groups that I've ever been with where like these guys are just, you can tell that they've been together for a long time and it has that family feel. And then also I want to talk just a bit. I know we said we weren't going to talk too much about football, but you brought up one of my favorite players in Curtis Samuel. First of all, Steph, how do you feel about Curtis Samuel? Is this somebody, are you hopping on the Curtis Samuel hype train with us?
Sure, as long as he doesn't play for the New York Giants.
Yeah, there's a lot of rumors.
I like him so down. I love Curtis Samuel. I get down with some Curtis Samuel. I just don't think that that's the right fit for the New York Giants.
So, I'd agree with you. I don't want him to play for the Giants either.
So let's hear from you, man. What is it about Curtis Samuel? First of all, I think the reason I like him so much is because I think that he is going to end up in Green Bay. Like that is just a match made in heaven. I think that he's going to end up there. And, we saw Randall Cobb just putting up, 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns, basically averaging that throughout his whole career. And I think that Curtis Samuel is just going to fill that role perfectly if he ends up there. But I want to hear from you. What is it about Curtis Samuel?
Yeah, this is the fun thing about wide receivers and studying the position so intensely is that fit is so important, whether it's fit with the team, fit with the quarterback, fit with the offense. I don't know about you, Stephie, but I feel like for me, I'm still trying to kind of figure out exactly what Daniel, like what's his biggest strength besides the fact that he's like tough as hell. I think that's one thing that you can really say about him for sure. As a passer, I do think he's aggressive and like willing to kind of pull the trigger, which leads me to think of more of a Kenny Golladay type for the Giants. One of those type of receivers. He's already got such a good thing with Darius Slayton. Like, why not try to double that? They've already got a reliable slot guy in Sterling Shepard. And then for Curtis Samuel, though, I think he's almost one of these guys that could, whether he's going to be maximized anywhere, I think he could fit really anywhere because I think he's good at a lot of different things. When I first really started to get aboard and try to like elbow my way into the top of the hype train for Curtis Samuel was after charting his 2018 season, when he was really, just kind of a part-time player, charting him in reception perception. He was a guy that was getting open at an extremely high rate, and that's deep, short, intermediate, all levels of the route tree. Basically at this point with his reception perception results the last 3 years, 2018, 2019, 2020, if he never finds, and I would say he's already had a successful season. I try to like just to put things into numbers, try to say like, well, if these guys have 1,000-yard season, I'm going to consider that a success. It might not be a huge fantasy hit, but we know that there's so much else that goes into fantasy production besides just how good of a player someone is. I'm kind of like, can I take that? Can I take that for Samuel since he had 1,000 total yards, or does that not really count? It's hard to say, but I would say he's already established himself as a good player. But leading into that 2019 season, for me, it was just, I thought he was going to be a, Stephon Diggs, Calvin Ridley type of separation-based wide receiver. Unfortunately, the quarterback situation that year, they had him running a bunch of vertical routes. Cam Newton gets hurt. I still maintain that if we had seen something close to the peak version, even 2018 Cam Newton, the early part of that year, if that player had been around in 2019, which obviously he was not, I think we could have seen Curtis Samuel's breakout happen a year early. Was not going to happen with Kyle Allen and the boys back there. It was just not going to work out. So I think what he showed you last year is that he can adjust into, playing that slot role, playing, getting obviously some rushing work as well. To me, I just think there's so much to his game that has yet to be unlocked. I would love to see him land on a team that has an alpha wide receiver. Obviously, Green Bay, you made the connection. A lot of people make the connection there. That would be a good spot, because they also make use of a lot of motions. I mean, they've been, having Kyle Irvin out there. Tyler Irvin out there on those motion plays, and then you never give him the ball because you're not gonna give the ball to Tyler Irvin, right? But like you're gonna give the ball to Curtis Samuel. I think it would make that offense that much better. There's a lot of spots I would be really psyched to see him land in.
Yeah, Casey would be another one that I've thought of a few times, but I think the problem with him in Carolina is that Christian McCaffrey takes all of those short dump offs off the middle, and that's where Curtis Samuel could really excel. So I'd love to see it. Another call out that I just saw, he had the second highest catch rate in the NFL this year. So not only can he separate, but if you get the ball to him, he's going to catch it, which is awesome.
Oh, yeah.
So you've talked about reception perception a few times now. Why don't you go ahead, for the viewers that aren't familiar with what it is, just give them a brief rundown of what reception perception is and how they can use that in fantasy football.
Reception perception, like I said, it was the methodology that I developed when I was first starting out in the industry, and basically exactly what I said, which was I was trying to quantify the qualitative reality of route running, right? Because we all know that wide receivers are the position, perhaps more than any other in the NFL, that is inherently dependent on other variables in order to accrue production. You mentioned, I think it was before we started taping or at the beginning, I was on the FF Intervention this week. They asked me what stat is sort of, almost like a fake stat for wide receivers. And I'm like, all of them, right? Because they need so many, they need so many other things to go right just in order to get a target, much less for that target to be catchable. Quarterback's got to deliver the ball on time. They've got to be kind of put in a good role by the team, the offensive coordinator, scouted the right way by the front office. The offensive line has got to give the quarterback time. Really the only thing that the wide receiver can control is how often do they run good routes, get open, get separation, and present a reasonable target for those quarterbacks. And then, of course, they got to catch the ball and then hopefully do something with it afterwards. But first and foremost, it's about getting open and winning on your routes. And to me, I thought that was something that's not really, there's no raw stat out there that's going to tell you how good of a route runner someone is. It's not catch rate. It's not yards per target, yards per reception, any of that stuff. So to me, what I wanted to do was go in and chart exactly how often everybody ran their routes well. So what I do is over an 8-game sample for NFL players and college players. Rookies will be back this year. That is one of the announcements that I've already hinted at. How often do they run each type of route? How often do they get open versus man, zone, press coverage? How often do they get open on each route type? Basically, the goal of reception perception is to isolate wide receiver play from the quarterback and all other variables. And, of course, one of the ways you can use it for fantasy, and I know that dynasty players have used this over the years, redraft players use it over the years, is like just basically like who's good, right? Because eventually I think talent wins out. There's been very few players that have been, quote, good in reception perception from an NFL standpoint. Like once they get on the NFL field and they put up numbers in reception perception, like I said, eventually they find their way to production. So it's kind of trying to tell you who's good before everyone else knows they're good. There've been players like Allen Robinson, Stephon Diggs, all of these guys through the years that have really been breakout players that you could use perception for that for. But it's also just, getting smarter about players in the league and also showing you kind of the wide receivers. And this is another reason I love the position so much. Like a wide receiver is not a wide receiver is not a wide receiver. A Juju Smith-Schuster is very different from a Kenny Galladay, right? Like they're used very differently. They win in very different ways. So it's almost like, what's the point of comparing these two guys together? Let's group Juju in this archetype and Kenny Galladay in this archetype and then make comparisons. So that's just more of a high level way to use it than just like, well, draft this guy at the 7th round, blah, 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 blah. So yeah, that's a sort of the sales pitch for reception perception.
Yeah, you've done some great things with it over the years, and I'm excited for rookies to come back in that. So I know that you said that it's still TBD that you haven't gone through it yet, but I'm sure you've started doing a little bit of your homework. Have you looked at much of the rookie incoming class yet?
Yeah, so started on rookies a little bit, mostly focused primarily right now on NFL players and free agents because there's, just obviously a ton that's coming down the wire. This free agency class is electric. There's even after Allen Robinson and Chris Godwin were franchise tagged, I think it was a surprise that Galladay was not among that group. This is still a really interesting class of free agents because, you can get a lot of really solid. I think Galladay and Will Fuller are kind of like fringe number one receivers. Fuller's interesting because he never played that role before. Galladay obviously has, but those guys are kind of a tier below the Robinson type of true alphas. I'm totally not answering your question now. But it's just such a stack.
If you don't like a question, you just give it off and talk about something you want to.
It's such a stacked group of free agent wide receivers. So that's kind of where my focus has been right now, with a little bit of sprinkling of rookie work. But I'm definitely going to start hitting that hard here pretty soon. I've been in the lab charting, that's for sure. Just haven't exactly told everyone where they're going to find it this year.
So something else I wanted to talk about is this show that you did. Was it 2 years ago, right? The fantasy where you were where you going through?
Yeah.
I watched those videos, and first of all, they were hilarious. You gotta dig a little bit to find them, but those videos were really funny. But if you want to let everyone know kind of what that show was, and then once you explain it, I've got a quick question for you about that show as well.
I'm sure you're gonna have a lot of questions about that particular show. That is a shout out to the team, the Yahoo Sports social team that did a great job shooting, editing, ideating for that show. That was definitely not a solo lift. Basically, the concept was every year I'd kind of had this bit, even dating back to the NFL Network days on the NFL Fantasy Live podcast. Like every year I'd kind of say like I was a lifelong fan of a new team, which of course people on Twitter get so upset about. And it just is one of, when you guys probably know how I feel about this. It's like when you're kind of just out there trolling a little bit and you hook someone real good, it just it feels so great when you because you don't get upset. They're so upset by this objectively stupid thing, and there's all of this stupid energy around being a fan as if it's this noble charge that you've been a fan of this team your whole life and I've lived and died through all of the bad times. I mean, congrats on being in a terrible relationship for 20 plus years. Great job. You know, they never call you back. They never text you first. They never pay for dinner. Congrats. You've been with them for 20 years. You're doing great stuff. That's basically what it's like being a fan of a bad team. But people do wear that. It's like a badge of honor. So, you know, when I'm out there like, oh, man, the Rams are making their first playoff run with Sean McVay as the head coach. And I'm like, I'm a lifelong LA Rams fan. You know, I live in LA. I'm a lifelong fan. Or, you know, when the Bears in 2018, they had that good season. I'm like, I'm obviously a lifelong Bears fan, you know, and you always say, you got to say, I'm a lifelong Bears fan in 2018, because then people will inevitably be like, how could you say lifelong for 1 year? It's like, obviously this is just a joke. So our idea was basically, it's a joke, right? Obviously, we all got a kick out of that during the 2018 season in the Yahoo Sports social room. So we basically came up with the idea to kind of do like a mock Bachelor style show where we would have fans from, and sometimes, most times, you know, we faked it. It was an acting out of like someone that was not real. You know, Andy Behrens was on the show as an actual Bears fan. There were some other ones that were, you know, they might have been a little bit of acting job there. Basically kind of giving a pitch to like why I should be a lifelong fan of their team for the 2019 season. Every single, you know, in the first episode, we wiped out like half the league because there's a lot of teams I'm not getting on board with. You know, it's like, I'm not going to be a Cowboys fan. Give me a break. I have some self-respect. At that time, I was not going to be, you know, a Patriots fan, because that's ridiculous. There are like, you know, in a very me way, there are like parameters and rules that I need to live by as in this exercise. So there were certain parameters and rules, and we eventually, through a very stupid 5-episode series, we nailed it down to the San Francisco 49ers for that 2019 season. And hey, they went to the friggin' Super Bowl, so like it turned out pretty well.
And who was the runner-up in 2019? Do you remember that one?
Look over your shoulder, Dave. It was your Bears.
Dave, how excited were you to see that?
I was very excited, but I'm just wondering, what was it that made you choose the 49ers over the Bears? Well, at the end of the day, especially when you've got Andy Behrens pitching the Bears to you.
Right. So the funny thing was, you know, I had like the Bears had been the team. There was no show, but they had been like the bit team in 2018. So I had always intended to like, let's string the Bears a little, you know, along for a little bit. And then, you know, episode 3, drop them like it's hot. But then we sort of just kind of kept, I really like actually wanted Andy to do that video pitch and then cut them. Ended up not doing that. You know, they stuck around, and then, you know, at one point I'm tweeting about the show, and my guy, Allen Robinson, responds and is like, hey, man, you've got to be a Bears fan again, the whole thing. So when he got involved, then it's like, well, shit, I can't. Oh, so I don't know if I can curse on the show, but I just did. I mean, it's like, I don't know if I got to drop. I can't drop the Bears after Allen Robinson says, like, got to be a Bears fan. So, you know, I found them compelling. Obviously, I'm a huge Allen Robinson fan. That he's been, you know, reception perception stud from day one. We're good pals, the whole thing. So like they kind of compelled me. I always actually sneaky liked Matt Nagy's like play design and the concepts that he would have. Sometimes is the key word there. You know, again, this is leading into 2019. And whoo boy, am I glad I didn't pick them, because that was not a fun year to be a Bears fan. So like I usually do, I get in when the getting's good, and then get out of there, you know? So that's kind of, I just ended up picking the 49ers because I love Kyle Shanahan's offenses, you know, big fan of a lot of players there. So that was kind of the way that went down. And also, like, you know, the 49ers have been terrible the year before. That is the key to this exercise, is you always want to jump in at the right time, like when they're that sort of hype team, but not like, you know, they didn't go to the playoffs last year or something. That's kind of key to the exercise as well.
It's funny that this whole thing was kind of birthed from trolls, because when it comes to, you know, poking the bear when trolls start coming at him, I don't know if there's anybody that does that better than Steph. You know, a lot of people are just like, don't engage. And Steph just, she invites him in with open arms and just makes it a game, which is kind of fun to watch.
Well, it's like, why are you getting so upset? Let's talk about it. Like, what is upsetting you so much about my comment or my like, we can all just have takes and not get upset about it. Do you want to talk? Let's talk. You can come my DMs, like give me my therapist number, like we can figure it out. I don't know why I'm being so worked
Do not
out.
come in my DMs.
Well, maybe not, but my DMs are already flooded. I won't see it. So it's like crazy. I mean, Dave is always talking me off the ledge, but sometimes you can't. Like, I gotta stand my ground a little bit, and I'm definitely learning how to not engage as much. But even today, I mean, it's like you're making a burner to like talk about something that is so crazy. You don't have anything better to do. Go to the grocery store, buy food for your family or something. Like, there's not something that you can do. It's
one of the
crazy.
best pieces of advice I ever got was my good friend Eric Stoner, who he's not on Twitter anymore. Smart move by him, but he used to do like draft content back in the days. He always used to say like, once you log off, none of these people exist, and that it's so true, right? Like you said, Steph, like you can poke that bear and you can have it. Like sometimes it's fun. It is funny to get people all worked up when like you're not really bothered by something. Also, it's fun when people just like the joke goes right over their head. That's always great. That's fun times. And it just like once you click that X button on your desktop or you close the app on your phone, it's like, oh, right. I'm here by, none of these people are actually here. Yeah.
Yeah, literally, that's exactly what it is. And a lot of times too, I think people just everyone's looking for a fight and they're looking for engagement. Yeah. And then you say, like, I look at it sometimes, I'm like, I wasn't even talking about what you're like attacking me for. I was just making a point. I'm like making a point about Jimmy Garoppolo, and then you're bringing up Tom Brady. Like, it just like doesn't even make sense what's going on. So it's hard. I mean, that's a learning curve. That's definitely been one of the hardest things being on.
Yes.
Yeah, is not engaging.
I'm a very sarcastic person, and trying to put sarcasm into whatever it is, 280 characters or whatever. I realize it doesn't really work too well. Sarcasm typically goes over like 90% of the people's heads. So it's something that I've just kind of tried to stray away from on Twitter because it ended up just making me look like a jerk most of the time. But anyway, you had talked about Andy a little bit and how he was pitching you to be a Bears fan. So you guys have, a pretty funny relationship. You see you guys going back and forth on social media and stuff all the time. So I just want to ask you, do you have any good stories about Andy that you want to share that the audience might like?
Yeah. Andy, when I first met him, I started at Yahoo in the summer of 2018. I didn't really know, other than Brad, who's not there anymore. He's, chief, whatever, the high head honcho, the head huevos officer at FTN, Steph. So, Brad was really the only one that I knew Liz a little bit. And I obviously, followed all of the folks there, but I didn't really have like a relationship with anyone beyond Brad, from the analyst side when I started at Yahoo. So everyone was just kind of on a clean slate, basically. And, with Andy, I only really knew him because, he had this like very clean cut profile picture. Like this is so like deep Twitter stupid stuff to even talk about. But like, 3 years ago or something, that was like Andy. You could probably Google like Andy Behrens in this like clean shaven, all dark hair, like picture that looks like it's from frickin' 15 years ago. It was his profile picture. And I met him and I was like, Andy, change your profile picture, bro. Like you're like, I was like, you're kind of like sneaky handsome, man. Like you got this good, he's older than me. So this is another piece of advice I got from Sigmund Bloom at one of the football guys retreats. Actually, I was 23 years old at the time. Bloom basically said, like, hey, man, you're the youngest one here by far. Like, use that as your weapon before it gets turned against you by all these old people here who are really just jealous. So I had always kind of come in like, yeah, I'm always going to kind of be at this point. I'm not. I'm like almost 30 in a few months. Like I'm washed now, in terms of running backs. I'm over the hill. But like at that time, I came into Yahoo's again, the youngest person there by far. Shout out to me. And I said to Andy, I was like, dude, you've got this really good like silver fox thing going on. You've got like, he's growing a goatee now at this point. Like, I was like, this should be your profile picture. He's like, nah, actually, I don't think he's like, I'll change it. Let me just make it a picture of your dog, which I thought was so like funny. Cause again, we like didn't really know each other that well. And he's just like, no, I'll make it a picture of Charlie. Like send me any picture of Charlie. And we're like, at this point, I think I'd known Andy for about a year now. And I'd been trying to convince him to change this profile picture for a whole year. And this was at the FSTA, now FSGA conference in Tampa in early 2019. And, we're slinging drinks back or whatever. And I finally convinced him to change the profile picture to a picture of my dog. Not to a good looking picture of him, but a picture of my dog. So for like a year after that, I think the entire NFL season, his profile picture was a picture of my dog. And like people would tweet at him and be like, cute dog, Andy. And he's like, yeah, thanks. But it was a whole bit for an entire year. And one funny thing about Andy, and I feel totally comfortable that he would be cool if I shared this. Again, I mentioned whole night, we're tipping drinks back, go back and forth the whole that's how these fantasy conferences is. It's basically everybody, whatever, just gets drunk. And, then I'm like, again, remember I said I'm much younger than Andy, but like the next morning I wake up like, geez, I'm not doing so well. And I go to like the lobby of the hotel and Andy's like coming back from in his running clothes. Like, oh yeah, just logged 10 miles. I'm like, this guy is a freaking machine. So there's a good couple of Andy stories all wrapped together.
Yeah. Andy is definitely one of my favorite personalities on Twitter. Just seems like a great guy. But you talked about Andy, you talked about the conferences, you've talked about NFL Network, you've talked about football guys. I mean, through your climb up to where you're at right now at Yahoo, you've been on a lot of prominent teams with a lot of, different people. And I'm sure you just have like endless stories that you can share, but of all the teams that
I can't.
Exactly. I bet. But of all the teams you've been on, what were some of your favorites and why? I know you mentioned Sigmund Bloom giving you some knowledge right off the bat. And I feel like everything that comes out of Sigmund Bloom's mouth is just like, wow, I need to remember that for the rest of my life. I mean, like he's just a wealth of knowledge. But what are some of the favorite teams and stories you've had from your time getting up to Yahoo?
Yeah. My favorite team is and probably will always be the Fantasy Stronghold from the NFL Network, which I would consider to be myself, Marcus Grant, Alex Gelhar, Matt Franciscovich, franchise, James Coe, Adam Rank, and then Patrick Claybon there too. Even though he wasn't doing fantasy stuff, like we just had a great team of guys. I saw like. I remember feeling at one point just being like, this was back when we were all there. Obviously now Rank and Marcus are still there. Everyone else has gone on to do different things. I'm at Yahoo. Gelhar is like saving the world as a lawyer and then also still doing freelance stuff with 4for4. James has done like 1,000 different things. He even had a little stint at Yahoo. Franchise is working on Madden. But I remember like when we were all together at one point, like we're all at a bar, hanging out. And I remember thinking like, man, this is such a unique, special time in all of our lives where who knows, this will not, I remember having this moment. You have these moments in life sometimes where you're like, this is not going to last forever. This is, I honestly have a little bit of like goosebumps thinking about like coming to this realization, being like, this is not going to last forever. And like, I love these guys so much. They've become like my best friends. And like we are five, six dudes that like we work for the NFL and like we get paid to talk about football. Like, and we legitimately love and care for each other. And like our friends, like our families have become friends. Like we all still hang out. Maybe not as much in the last year, but I mean, we all hang out. Like one of the last moments in 2020 where not all of us, but like we all saw each other. I was like carrying Marcus. He has a kid now. I'm like carrying his like baby around and like showing him all these different things. And I'm like, this is, it became like a family and it's just a unique and rare thing to have happen. They will always be my favorite group because of that. And, even though we've all gone our separate ways now, I still consider us to, like, we still talk every day. We have a Slack chat where we're, all you people out there, we're definitely talking behind your back. No, I'm just kidding. Like it's it's one of the, not you two, but all the other.
Of course not. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean they were a great team, and it's a shame that we couldn't have just like stayed there for the rest of our lives and done that for the rest of our lives. But I think we've all gone on to do different things, and it has been great. And also, I love that team too because like this, I'll say this as as a white guy with a beard and parted hair. We weren't like 5 white guys with a beard and parted hair, which is like 99% of every fantasy podcast out there. We were like a diverse group that came from different backgrounds and everything. And I always appreciated. It was me and franchise, beards and parted hair, but everybody else looked, yeah. So yeah, I always thought we just had a great thing, and I miss it every day. But life brings you good surprises like that.
So are you saying that I should shave my head and grow out a goatee? Is that how I can really kind of get myself to the next level? Just get rid of the normal beard and the parted hair?
I think what you should do is just shave it all off. Just go complete cue ball.
What about me?
Do
I
that.
shave mine off, you think? Or how does
No. I would
You've already got the non-nail part going.
my entire family's bald anyway, so I think it's good.
Me too. Like I said, I'm staring down 30 soon, and don't get used to this is what I'm saying.
Oh, this is gone.
I didn't realize that all of you guys were working together at NFL. I mean, that is
Really?
just an
That's
absolute
awesome.
just powerhouse right there. And it's always cool when you see some groups like that, and then everyone kind of splits apart and goes their separate way. For at RotoWire, it was Ian Hartitz and Adam Levitin and Evan Silva, and they were all doing their thing together, and then kind of branched out and did their own thing. But yeah, you want to try to cherish those moments when you've got something good and keep it together as long as you can.
Yes.
Like
Yeah. So,
Dave,
what's up?
like us, Dave.
Exactly.
You
Yeah,
have
like
to cherish this moment
Troy, Steph, and I. Steph, and I, we all got into Twitter right around the same time, and we just connected right off the bat. And like those are just my people. Like we share everything with each other. Like, and it's just like Troy, Steph, and I. That's it. Like that's the trio right there, and we're sticking together as long as we can.
There will be one point when you guys do like look back at that, and because like I've been doing this now this is like a probably 7th, 8th season. Well, not 8th. Okay, I'm being a little.
It's okay, we'll give you the 8. Okay.
Yeah, like seven seasons or so doing this like full or mostly almost completely full time, and yeah, it's like it does feel like forever ago that I was in the studio with those guys at NFL, because it's been a long time. It was a long time ago, quote unquote, in that sense that I was writing for football guys. And you will look back, you do cherish that like initial group even more. Cause yeah, that was like my first like full-time family, but then it's like, yeah, there was the football guys family before that. There was like the people that first like read it, I like at one point I tweeted out like a reception perception chart being like, what do you guys think about this? Like, what is this stuff? And like those people, when I had like 200 followers or something, like you remember that stuff. And it just holds a special place. You guys will always have that at some point, like 10 years, you both will be working for, FTN will be like on every TV station in the damn United States. Like you'll be like, oh yeah, I remember when I used to pod with Dave all the time. Cause like you can't do everything forever, but like you can always stay tight and be friends. And I don't know. I think that's my favorite part about like the community and everything like that is you stay in touch with all these people for years and you like see their lives grow and like take different opportunities. And that's why I think this is just such a cool and unique space. Like you could focus on like the negatives of being on Twitter and all this stuff, but there's a lot of positive stuff too. And I think the connections that you make with other people is really a cool thing.
Yeah, for the people that focus on the negative, just change your focus. I mean, that's really all it is. All the people that are sitting here like, oh, there's so much negativity. Well, maybe it's the people you're following. Maybe it's the people or the way that you're reacting with people. There's a lot of good that comes out of this.
Absolutely. You have to look at who you surround yourself with. It means a lot. I think that, and it's crazy. Like, you look back, even myself, like 200 followers in October. Did I think that I was going to get a lifelong best friend? And then all of a sudden now I have Dave, who the two of us now have a Friday show. And we have freaking Matt Harmon on. Like, are you kidding me? This is crazy. So it's little moments like this. Like even like I'm being a little bit more quiet than normal, but I think you're like striking a chord with me, like thinking about things and reflecting on how everything, like how far we've come. And I think it's being, being thankful for what you have and how far you've come and how blessed you are, because not everyone gets the same opportunity as one another.
Let me put it this way, Steph. I never, when I decided to start doing this as even just as a hobby, like started a website, not no one's paying me. No one's reading that site. Let me tell you that. I never, at that point in my life, 2013, Matt Harmon would never imagine that someone on a video would say, we have freaking Matt Harmon on here. I'd imagine it was like, oh, freaking Matt Harmon is coming over again. This guy better pad the walls, baby. Like,
oh man. So I ask this question to just about every guest that we have on the show. And I'm just looking for a piece of unique information. Because if you ask anybody, hey, how do you make it in this industry? Everyone says the same thing: work hard, be positive. But really, there's a little bit more to it. And there's even a lot of luck that I think a lot of people don't like to admit goes into this as well.
Yes,
but what would be the one piece of advice besides work hard and be positive that you'd give to somebody that's trying to make that turn into being full-time?
Yeah, get lucky is definitely that's part of it, right? Because I always say that this is the analogy I always make when it comes to the fantasy industry or football media or sports media in general. It's a really, really big house, right? Like there's so much room to create content. Like people always ask me, like, how do you get started? Well, I'm like, that's the easy part. Just get started. Like find someone else that you like and do a live stream. Like put a video on YouTube, write an article, start a website. That getting started is easy. Like getting into the house is easy, but quote, like getting a seat at the table in that house, like a full-time, job that you don't have to worry about the next, like that's hard to find. And I am lucky that I have one of those seats, because you guys could probably do it just as good or better than me. Like someone else could do it just as good or better than me. Right. Like that there is definitely an element of luck to this for sure. I would say that the biggest piece of advice I have, and I mentioned a little bit earlier, but it is really you have to find something that differentiates your content from everyone else. For me, that was reception perception. If you're looking for like the thing, you already probably know the answer as to what that is. If it's a topic or a series, for me, it was like, again, what's the biggest question that I have about football? For me, it was about wide receiver play and route running. And I was like, okay, no one else is answering it. I'm going to be the one to answer it. And if that takes literally thousands and thousands of hours of charting routes and trying to figure it out before it's right, that I will do that. I will be the one, like, that's the work hard part, right? The obvious part, that it does take sacrifices and not like, crazy sacrifices, but it does to take some level of sacrifice to do that. At this point I've logged like I think I've looked at it recently. It's like over 60,000 routes, over 250 players over the last 7-8 years. Like it has been a fun journey, but yeah. So kind of like find that question that you have about football and be the one to answer it. And don't like model yourself off anyone, because the thing is, if you're trying to model someone's path, the problem is, like I said, you have to stand out and they've already done it. So don't try to be the biggest Twitter personality. Try to find the next platform, the next thing that people aren't already doing, so that new people can find you. That's kind of the way I think you have to go. You have to go about it.
That's fantastic advice. So I've got one more question. We don't get too much into football talk here, but I read an article of yours a few weeks ago that rubbed me the wrong way just a little bit, Matt. And I'm wondering if you've changed your stance at all on this. So I was with you at the time. You pulled out the BS meter on the Russell Wilson talk, and you said on a 4 to 5 scale, you said that Russell Wilson coming to Chicago, you had marked as a 4 on the BS scale. Seems like that's starting to pick up a little bit of steam right now. I'm trying not to get my hopes up too much. I'm trying not to get my hopes up too much. I think Steph reminds me every single day, don't get your hopes up. Don't buy into the stream. But on the 1 to 5 scale, are you still sitting at a 4, or have you moved that at all?
I'm not at a 4 anymore. That's for sure. That was before like the athletic column, everything like that. I still think the chances are like, probably 80% that Wilson is a Seattle Seahawk in 2021. 2022, all bets are off, right? Like I could totally see this being his last year in Seattle. Just like, look, that game being football is like very relationship based, there's so much that goes into the interpersonal part of it that we just will never understand. And, to some degree, you get in the locker room, you shut it out, and you go to work and you do your thing. You play the game and you try to win. But relationships matter a lot. Like, there's a reason that every coach's son and every coach's best friend, gets jobs over and over and over again, because it's a relationship business. And when those relationships are fractured, it's hard to go to work. And if you are, like, say, for example, just an example, you guys say you're doing this show, you two are doing this show for like 10 years. One, God bless you. And two, like at one point, say in year 10, Dave, you just can't stand Steph anymore.
Very realistic. It's a very realistic thing that would happen.
For whatever reason, you just are, you can't, you're just over it. Something happens, there's a break in connection there, but you still got to do it because you have a $1 trillion contract signed to this show with your trillions of viewers. Like you got to do this thing, right? You got to go out there and do it. It's going to be a lot harder. It's going to be a lot harder if you don't like each other, and the same thing with a quarterback and a head coach. But the difference here is Russ has the leverage to make things uncomfortable. And I think the biggest thing is not necessarily going to be Russ, it's not going to be Russ like coming in there and being bad or the team being bad or anything like that. But man, Russ has done this differently than like a Deshaun Watson has, where Deshaun has been like, my problem is with management. My problem is with the owner and the weird preacher character coach that they got in here. That's where my problems lie. Russ, on the other hand, has been like, I'm tired of getting hit. I'm tired of the offensive line, sucking or whatever. Well, at some point, Russ is going to have to walk back in that locker room, right? And that's going to be very uncomfortable. So I think 80% chance, which is not 100. Like there's the 20% chance that Russ is not with the Seahawks this year. That's bigger than I would have put it when I wrote that article, Dave. That's for sure. So 80% chance Russ is back for one last very uncomfortable year in Seattle. And then he's playing for, whichever poor soul replaces Matt Nagy as the head coach in Chicago in 2022.
Yeah, I think that's pretty spot on. I saw something else too, where they already paid his contract for this year, so they'd be eating like $30 million in cap.
Also,
if they traded him.
are gonna get stuck with Trubisky for another year.
I'm stuck with it. I'm not a Trubisky hater. We're fine. I'd rather have Trubisky than
grounded. I'm keeping you grounded. It's very important to keep you grounded.
All of us, Allen Robinson folks, all we want is like Fitzpatrick. Like that's God. What I'm not at all like attached to the Bears anymore, right? Like I'm not a lifelong Bears fan. That was just in 2018. So I don't care about the Bears, but I care about Allen Robinson. And like Ryan Fitzpatrick would be the best quarterback that Robinson has played with in his life. Well, I don't know what his high school quarterback situation was, but go back and look at who he was playing with at Penn State. Those were some goofballs there too. McGloin, Christian Hackenberg.
Yep.
So like Fitzpatrick would be the best quarterback that Allen Robinson has played with his entire life. The second he walked in the door by like a country mile, like Fitzpatrick is not coming in to save Matt Nagy's job. He's not coming in to save Ryan Pace's job. We don't care about that stuff. It's over. They shouldn't have brought him back this year. He's just coming in to save like Allen Robinson's fantasy season, his production, so that he can walk next year and go finally play with a Hall of Famer or something. I don't know if there's any justice in this world.
I mean, Ryan Fitzpatrick turned Devontae Parker into a wide receiver one. I couldn't even imagine what he could do with somebody like Allen Robinson. But we are going to sign off here. Matt had an absolute blast on the show today. If this is Matt Harmon at 6 out of 10, I'd love to have you back one day. Just fully pedal to the metal at 10 out of 10. I can't even imagine. But we got a good guest coming on next week. Steph, why don't you let everybody know who we've got coming on next week?
We have Scott Fish coming on, who I'm so excited about. And everyone knows Scott Fish is the first person to give me my big shout out when I was at a mere like 500 followers. And it was like the biggest boost in my confidence. And that's where I decided that maybe I had a shot at this thing. So I'm very excited to chop it up with him. Matt, thank you so much for coming on. It means a lot. I appreciate it. Thank you for answering my Instagram message about time management.
Matt's now everyone knows how they can get through to Matt.
Oh yeah, great.
Way to go. Cat's out of the bag, Steph.
Okay, the viewers are down right now. It's okay.
Well, Matt, if you want to let everyone know one more time where they can find you, what you got going on, and then we'll go ahead and end this thing.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. This was honestly so much fun. I had a blast. Love to kind of take sort of a grand view of things in general, not just talk about, what's which Giants receiver who should sign with the Giants, right? Like, although I'm actually really curious because I hope Steph can clue me in on who is actually the best fit there. Cause I still don't know. I'm sitting here like 100. I don't know. Anyways, thank you guys for having me. This was honestly, like I said, a ton of fun. You guys will love, even this was just 6 out of 10. I wanted to set the bar low for Scott. No, Scott's the best. He's the man. He's going to have a lot of fun next week too. People can find me at Matt Harmon _BYB on Twitter. And just like I said, big things, big announcements, big tweets are coming about where you can find reception perception. So maybe just go ahead and, click that, that little bell, the notification, like every single time I tweet, you'll get a notification. So when that announcement's coming. No, don't do that. Cause it's the weekend. You never know what kind of,
that,
right? you never know what's going on. No, thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.
Anytime. You're always welcome back. And I'm Stephie Smalls.
I'm Dave Kluge. And this is our Friday show. Thanks for tuning in.